Hi, everyone, and welcome to the live stream of Redefine the Donor's Experiences with Salesforce.org and StoreConnect. Today, we will talk about real solutions to the industry challenges that not for profit organizations are facing today. I'm Pauline, and the founder and managing director of AFDigital, and I'm really excited to facilitate today's amazing conversation that we're going to have with the industry's esteemed speakers, who will be sharing with you insights and opportunities that will hopefully allow you to move your mission forward more efficiently. Let me introduce to you our speakers for the day, starting with StoreConnect founder and CEO Michael Linzer, and he's here to discuss how Salesforce and StoreConnect offers a complete integrated e-commerce solution for not-for-profits. Michael launched StoreConnect e-commerce 3.0 in 2018 on the Salesforce App Exchange. His vast IT experience ranges from network infrastructure to custom web application development and several successful SaaS businesses and consulting companies. He also worked as a full-time volunteer for a decade until 2010, helping families and communities deal with the problems relating to drug abuse, criminality, and marriage difficulties. He is now bringing StoreConnect to the NFT sector to help them reach as many people as possible with their excellent works. We are also going to have an exciting fireside chat with Mia Pacey, who is a co-chair of the Sydney Salesforce Women in Tech group, and Mike Pepau, who heads up the business solutions for UNICEF Australia. Mia has worked with many not-for-profit Salesforce organizations, both charitable with volunteer management and commercial aspects, using apps such as StoreConnect. Mia was awarded the Golden Hoodie in 2021. Later, we'll ask her what that means. She's a community group leader for the Sydney Salesforce Women in Tech and has volunteered for over 16 years. She's very passionate about helping not-for-profits streamline their business processes and sharing knowledge through workplace training and externally on her professional YouTube channel that I will ask her to share with you today so you can follow her. Mike has been evangelizing and implementing CRM in corporate and not-for-profit organizations for over 20 years, with the last 8 years focused on Salesforce in the not-for-profit sector. He guides the UNICEF Australia team through a Salesforce CRM project that successfully went live in 2020, a very pivotal change in their broader digital transformation project. Mike also co-leads the Sydney Salesforce user group, encouraging all not-for-profit Salesforce users to share their experiences and enthusiasm for the platform. To start, allow me to share with you some key stats reflecting the challenges in the not-for-profit space. These stats came from the Salesforce Not-for-Profit Trends Report, which you're welcome to download the full details for salesforce.org. As you can see, these figures paint a picture of the common challenges not-for-profits face. A majority of organizations still operate in ambiguity and couldn't measure the thing that they do and quantify their impact. Furthermore, the accelerated shift to digital continues, and most not-for-profit need to work on their data strategy, integration, and automation to streamline everything. Clearly, a need for a smart digital solutions that allow your team to get more done with less and free them up to make a difference where it counts. So Michael has some answers for you today to tackle these issues. Michael, over to you.
Thank you very much, Pauline. So we'll jump to the next slide. And it's great to be on the call today, and it's really good to have everyone on watching away. I guess what I'm here to talk to you about is this idea of e-commerce 3.0, which is something that StoreConnect is bringing to market on top of the Salesforce platform. So that has created a really interesting situation for the not-for-profit space. And as Pauline mentioned, we are bringing this idea of e-commerce 3.0 to the not-for-profit sector. Now, when you think of not-for-profit, you don't necessarily think about e-commerce, but really they're very much entwined. And before I get into that, let's just have a really quick idea about what it is we're trying to achieve here. So next slide. When you're thinking about not-for-profit, a lot of what you do as a donation group is you talk to your donors or your beneficiaries online, you're getting a message across, and you're accepting donations, or you're selling services, or you're doing something in that not-for-profit sector. And a lot of the existing e-commerce 2.0 systems are focusing on all the wrong things. They're focusing not on your valuable time. And if you have a look at the not-for-profit sector, the time that you have available to do your job and the time that your team and your staff have available to do your job is probably your most valuable resource. And it's also the most irreplaceable resource. What you'll find is a lot of the existing e-commerce 2.0 systems that are out there require you to hook up different things and have lots of different things talking to each other, and you end up paying humans to get computers to talk to computers. So that's what we are trying to fix with e-commerce 3.0, and that whole idea of that wasted time ends now. So next slide, please. So fundamentally, why are we talking about e-commerce in the not-for-profit sector? Well, as I mentioned, you've got sales, you've got memberships, you've got recurring donations, you might be selling some sort of service, you might be selling merchandise, you might be selling equipment, you might be working with clubs or groups, you might want to put up multiple websites for these different organizations or different sub-organizations all around the world. There'll be all these sorts of different things that hang together and need that web presence to deliver what you need. And all the existing e-commerce solutions out there can do this, but they're all very separate parts of the same system. And you have to hook these up and wire them together somehow. So these existing systems are wasting a lot of time in the not-for-profit sector. So how do we get here? How do we get to e-commerce 3.0? Well, let me give you a little bit of a history of e-commerce. So can you go to the next slide, please? So the internet and online trading and online transacting all started, we can call it e-commerce 1, all the way back in the 80s. And these are some of the websites that were available at that time. And it's interesting that bottom one there is Amazon.com, and it looks a little different to what it looks like today. Funnily enough, Books.com, which is or Bookstacks Unlimited, I think it was called, which is the top right-hand corner, launched many, many years before Amazon. So if that's not an example that you don't have to be first to be the biggest, I don't know what it is. But e-commerce 1 was just proving that it's possible to sell online. And that phase lasted 5 to 10 years. And then we moved to e-commerce 2.0, which is the next slide. E-commerce 2.0 is where we find ourselves right now. Next slide, please. And this is really typified by a huge number of systems. And if you're like most of the not-for-profits I've met, then you will have a large number of these systems, and they're draining you time and resources. And usually what happens is you'll install one thing, and then you need to send emails out. So you'll go sign up for another thing that's a free trial or $5 a month or something. And then you go sign up for this other platform, and then you'll plug in some sort of CRM, and then someone says, oh, we need a way to collect some payments. So you plug in this thing over there, but that one doesn't do monthly recurring payments. So then you also get this other platform over there. And now you're somehow trying to wire all of this together with your invoicing system and your emailing software and then your marketing platform. And all these things are trying to talk to each other, and it just becomes a massive mess, a tangled web. So this creates a problem. And the thing that it drains in your company is, while each of these individually might not cost very much money month to month, the work it takes for you to pull all that together and hold it together with your team costs you a huge amount of money. Even if it's not in wages, just in lost time, because the time that your team is spending making all these systems talk to each other is time that you're not talking to your donators, not talking to your benefactors, not talking to people that can support and help grow your not-for-profit. Next slide. So StoreConnect brings e-commerce 3.0 to the not-for-profit sector. And e-commerce 3.0 fundamentally has two key ideas. The first one is that you have one system that you log into that has everything you need to get the job done. So you log into one spot, it handles your CRM, it handles your donations, it handles your marketing, it handles your one-off donations, it handles your merchandise sales or your services sales or booking an appointment to come and see one of your team. It handles all of that. It also handles your website. So you're not having to go and install WordPress or some other platform to keep your whole website running. All of it can be in that one platform and accessible. And the second thought is that it helps you own your own data. So all of the data that you capture around who's visiting your website, which campaigns they're coming in on, who's ordering what, who's buying what, who your donators are, is all available and captured within that one platform. And this improvement and efficiency really pays dividends and allows you to expand out and grow your organization. Next slide. So StoreConnect is a plugin that sits on top of Salesforce. You edit and use it within Salesforce. And this is a really powerful concept because Salesforce is the world's #1 CRM. It's available for not-for-profits. And StoreConnect plus Salesforce gives you a complete solution where you don't have to have all these different systems. What it really provides you is a single source of truth. One place to go to know everything about how your organization's doing, which donators are doing what, which benefactors are doing what, and being able to have that data in one spot, consolidated and accessible at any time. And really, at the end of the day, what we're after is time well spent. We want to spend the little time that you have well. Next slide. To give you a brief idea about what StoreConnect can do out of the box, it can handle your e-commerce, content management for all of your websites. It can do point of sale in a couple of months. It's coming soon, which means you can run the same software, the same billing system at a trade show or a not-for-profit fair or whatever you're at. It can run multiple storefronts. So you could have a different website for each region, or you could have different languages, or you can have different brands or different sub-brands or white label brands if you're doing a large sponsorship campaign or things like this with a big corporate. You can do all of that. It handles multiple storefronts to do that. It has shipping and inventory, allowing you to track merchandise sales, things like this. You can do subscriptions, signing up as a membership over a year, a month, recurring donation, recurring giving, all of that. It handles appointments and bookings, so being able to book courses, events, classes, times with one of your consultants or whatever it else it is that you deliver. And we also handle multiple currencies out of the box. So you can use the same Salesforce platform to run your not-for-profit in Australia and New Zealand, maybe up in Asia, maybe over in the US, wherever it is you want to expand, you can add that in. So to end off, I'm just going to show you 2 quick case studies. So next slide. So we're going to talk very briefly about Surf Lifesaving, which Mia knows something about, and Vision Trust, which is a not-for-profit in the USA. So next slide. So Surf Lifesaving Services had a challenge in that they were trying to integrate their website with their Salesforce and their learning management platform, while also providing a way for their for the people in New South Wales and Australia and their clubs to buy services and equipment from Surf Lifesaving Services. So StoreConnect allowed them to build that into a single solution, and that site is live. You can go look at it. It allows them to book courses online. It integrates and signs the clients up to their learning management system for their first aid training and other things like this. It has resources and PDFs, guides, etc. available on the website, and it's all completely built and managed within the Salesforce platform. So their system administrator handles all of the work needed to keep that site running and up to date, all from within Salesforce in a simple manner. Next slide. And Vision Trust is a charity based in the USA, and they run in US dollars, all on the StoreConnect platform. And what they wanted to do is capture a way of all their donations and recurring giving and child sponsorship and one-off project giving, and also variable donations. So someone being able to donate $5 or $1,000 or $888 if that's what they wanted to do, all on the one platform, and all capture that and have a single source of truth. StoreConnect greatly simplified their environment, and the head of Vision Trust has a quote on our website saying that there is nothing in the market that approaches what StoreConnect can do out of the box at the price point that we're at. So we really enjoy working with these not-for-profits. We'd love to work with you as a not-for-profit and have a conversation with you and see how we could help you spend more time well. So with that, I'd like to hand over back to Pauline and Mia and Mike to have a bit of a fireside chat. And I really appreciate your time, and thank you for listening to me, and I hope I spent your time well as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Michael. As a Store Connect customer myself, I still, every time you do this presentation, I really get incredibly proud of the work that you're doing and we're doing together, and the fact that you can offer it a complete solution. It just makes it a lot easier for organizations like ours, even if we're not in the not-for-profit space. If you guys have questions for Michael later, please don't hesitate to. He will come back, and just don't hesitate to send it to us, and he will address it later. So I'm very excited for our fireside chat. I'd like to welcome Mike and Mia. I'm really excited for the audience to learn from you today. I actually like to start by mentioning something that I learned about that broke my heart. So I'm not sure if you guys are aware. Just a few weeks ago, 1/3 of Pakistan was underwater. They experienced the worst flood the world has ever seen, and it gets worse because just yesterday the news reported that the authorities fear that it will take about 6 months before water recedes. So there are a lot of things about it that really bothering me. First of all, because that happens a lot in the Philippines. Number two, it wasn't in the media. It wasn't like, it was just like recently that I learned about it, and it made me think. When a life and death crisis like the worst flood, the biggest question for not-for-profit should ask themselves is how can they reach their donors and beneficiaries on a massive scale, to be able to provide that support. And from the last conversation that we had, that when we did this live, you both emphasized the importance of speed and agility with your operations. And I know for a fact that, Mike, this has been a huge focus for UNICEF because this has been the work we've been doing together. Can you talk more about this, please? Maybe, Mike, you can start. I can't hear you, Mike.
Part of me knew that was going to happen when I hit the mute button earlier. So
I can hear you now. Makes me happy to hear.
We'll get good at this eventually. Digital transformation, mute button. And what I just started saying is that I think the tragedy of the floods in Pakistan is a really good example of why we need to be so agile, because what actually happened with that is that there was a very brief spike in the press cycle. And there was that I'm not sure if you saw that terrible image of like an entire village being like just blown away. But then the press went away. And if we're not live and in market when that little spike happens for that kind of emergency, then we just simply do not raise the money, and that reduces our impact to children. So it's absolutely imperative that we have agile system that can respond to whatever is happening in the world very rapidly.
Yeah, and I remember last time we spoke, you mentioned that in a matter of hours, you've reduced it in a number of days. You have that ability now to be able to reach your donors. And for me, that's what it is. That's the real solutions to the industry challenges, because that's when it matters, when it's life and death. Are you able to speak more about this, on how you were able to make sure that this is a solution that you guys prioritize, how you were able to rally the entire company? Because all initiatives, at the end of the day, is an investment, right? And in a world where crisis seems to be happening on a regular basis, like there's you get pulled in different directions. So can you share with me more on how much you really got everyone together to focus on that agility that we've been talking about?
Yeah, sure. And I think that you probably need to start with the problem statement and say that when we started this journey, probably 3 years ago now, that our systems were atrocious. I think like a 20-year-old donor database. And we were importing web donations once every 1 to 2 weeks. And it would take us multiple days to stand up a new emergency and to be able to target our supporters. We were live with Salesforce 2 years ago, and that had made an enormous difference. And in fact, we can now respond within a few hours. And we actually went live with our new website yesterday, so
Yay,
that's even
I
improved.
heard.
So we now have an emergency template sitting ready to go. But I think the key thing that I'd point to is that the availability and quality of data, and that kind of sits at the middle of everything in terms of being able to respond quickly like that, and to be able to rely on our data and know who we're targeting and that we're actually speaking to the right people. In terms of how we actually get an initiative like this up, I think it's hugely important to establish a strong business case. In an organization like ours, which is very tightly governed, that means board support. And I think the number one hint that I give to anybody who's embarking on this journey is to just make sure that you have adequate funding. It's actually CRM transformation and websites, as it turns out, are actually quite hard to do and execute well. And you do need internal resources as well as excellent partners like AFDigital, for example, to actually get over that complexity and get the project up and running and then execute it successfully.
Thank you, Mike. What about you, Mia? Someone who is literally driving not just the strategy, but like driving the tech and implementing it. Can you talk more about, how as an organization you guys prioritize the importance of speed and agility and the whole digital transformation?
I think it comes down to a lot of flexibility. So if you put too much, I guess, red tape, approvals and everything, you obviously slow down your mission. And if your mission is to reach a lot of donors or aid a lot of members, similar to how Surf is, then it's just creating difficulties inside your organization. So to spin up something quickly, obviously you need tools like Salesforce and the StoreConnects to be able to implement something vastly superior to what you could probably roll out quickly yourself, but also reducing that red tape by getting those stakeholders on board early. So if they're on board in the whole journey and they're bought into the reason, you will definitely find a quicker outcome a lot better.
Yeah. So you both clearly are, specified that, business case, that stakeholder management. Can you walk us through your process in terms of how you started building that business case, how you presented it, and how you got the approval? Can you, maybe Mike, you can start.
Yeah, sure. As I said, I think it has to start with the problem statement and a long-term vision of who you want to be. And I think for us, the realization was that fundamentally we're a digital marketing organization, and our performance will stand or fall on our practices around digital marketing. And it turns out digital marketing is quite complex, which I probably don't need to say to this audience. So I think that we had that sort of very high level goal, and then I think when the project actually got up and running, it was all about establishing, I think, about half a dozen guiding principles as to what we were trying to achieve. And there were things like high quality of data, empowerment of end users, agility of movement, and so on, so that when you're making decisions in the project, that you've got that to guide you. And then working, as I said earlier, working with the right partners who've got the expertise to take you through that journey. We had a very complex project with 5 different partners, which was a stupid idea, but we seemed to manage to pull it off.
What is the right, you mentioned it's not good to have 5 partners. What do you think is the right the right balance?
Well, I think like one would be really good, but the truth is that the only one that you can have if you want one is like one of the big 6 Accenture type organizations, and in the non-profit sector that just doesn't have a good track record. So you need the specialists in each aspect of it. 2 or 3 would be good, probably. One's very hard. So for us, we had a separate AFDigital for marketing, and AlphaSys for our core CRM, which are kind of different projects in a way. And then a different data migration partner and so on. Yeah, different. It's very specialist expertise, and I think the biggest thing I'll emphasize is that your partners need to have industry expertise. Non-profit is different, and I think it's an absolute key success factor that you've got that vertical industry expertise, as Michael alluded to earlier. It's different.
Yeah. What about you, Mia? What would you advise, our listeners who's going through that journey? Like, how will they achieve that stakeholder approval, that one vision, like, that rallying the team?
Yeah, I think it's really important to start out by analyzing where you are. So make sure you understand the business processes that are currently in the business. So you can, as Mike said, create that problem statement. So to be like, this is where we're at, this is where we want to be, and this is the reasons why. And I think the reasons why have to be, especially like in not-for-profit, the funds are not as lucrative as in commercial. So a lot of it may be around saving time because ultimately that saves money, or it might be we're replacing this aspect that takes two humans, like Michael said earlier. So it's replacing something with a product, but it's not replacing someone's job. It's making you more efficient so that you don't hit those brick walls of admin kind of overheads where you're like, we would love to do more, but we physically can't because our humans can't work 24/7. And I know that we spend a lot of time in this volunteer space, but it doesn't mean we have to volunteer our time at work. So it's just
Yeah.
making sure that you know where you are, you know where you potentially want to be, sort of like a dream list. And those are okay to talk about with your partners because at least they know what are your real unforeseeable, what you could say outer space goals are. You're like, this would be amazing if I could. I don't know it's
North Star.
possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, like being like, I don't know if this is possible, but remembering that that's their expertise as a partner is to be like, yeah, this is really possible. Thank you for thinking of it. So don't be afraid to kind of push your own boundaries as a business to be like, this is what we historically have done, but doesn't mean we have to still do it that way.
Yeah, we don't have to be a victim of the status quo, right? We need to be innovative and forward thinkers. But what was the journey like with regards to the implementation? You both talked openly about having the right partners. You got the approval from your team, the board, and the stakeholders. What was the journey like with regards to? I can imagine it's not like all happy, happy, happy. I'm sure you got had we can talk about all some of the challenges that you faced, and how did you like overcome them?
Yeah, I think
I
it's
Maybe
think
start with
something you
you go
I'm
ahead,
so
Mike.
sorry.
we're all so
Let's start with
enthusiastic.
Mia first. Yeah, let's start with Mia.
um,
I love it.
I think it's really important to have your team set up before you implement journeys. So even on your customer side, so make sure you've got that Salesforce admin and that product owner or the project manager set up, because otherwise your journey is going to be super difficult, super complicated, and no one really knows whose job is what. So if you internally set up your project and buy into it, this will make your journey so much easier. And ultimately, have fun with it along the way. Don't make it such a business structured thing, because not for profit, we spoke about how different that space is. So just remember that. Remember your core values, remember who you're doing it for, and make sure that it doesn't become a chore. Make sure it's still at that dream list. Remember that star that you wanted to do. So yeah, that's what
And
I
the
would say.
why, right? But Mia,
Yeah.
what is because in the NFP space, it's like you said, like it's not like you have a lot of resources and time and volunteers and staff. You mentioned about setting the right team. How big is that? Like realistically, are you looking at 4, 5? Are you and what's the structure of that?
I think it comes down to how big you are as an organization. I currently sit on an IT team of 8, which is not norm, I guess, in the smaller not-profit spaces. But historically in Surf Life Saving, I was my only sole admin. So, I mean, you just have to make sure in non-profit we're used to wearing lots of hats. You just have to be prepared for that and work with the recommendations from your partner. So if the partner, they'll always probably recommend managing a product lead or a project lead. So make sure that you have that defined. I think there's not really a gold standard of what you should be doing, but just make sure that you adhere to what people are recommending, especially the people that are implementing from a partner or a product perspective.
Thank you. What about you, Mike? The challenge is probably the biggest challenge you faced because that was quite a long implementation cycle for you. Um,
Yeah.
how did you overcome?
And I think I'd echo what Maya said, which is setting up for beyond your go live date and making sure that you've focused on a sort of very minimum scope MVP approach for go live, but you're actually ready to deliver roadmap. In fact, having gone live with our website yesterday, that conversation was very pertinent on the day. You're saying, well, this isn't it. This is just day one. It's just, we're not. It's not finished. My manager talks about the analogy of we built a factory that is now producing our product, which is fundraising, and that we are constantly refining the factory as we go. So it's a continuous improvement, and it doesn't go away. It's a roadmap, and the digital marketing, the whole digital landscape keeps changing. New payment methods coming out next year, and it just keeps changing. So it's a journey.
I love that factory analogy. You really need to constantly optimize it, streamline the processes. It's not set and forget. If someone tells you that with this solution you can set and forget, like, they're not telling you the right things, right? Because I can't stress that enough. Like, you can't just think that it will. I always tell my clients, this is not a genie in the bottle that you rub it and it's like going to give you and solve all your problems. This is a journey. This is an ongoing thing. It's a constant optimization. So let's talk about the results, right? You've gone through and learned and really pushed the boundaries of what you guys can do for your organization as far as digital transformation. So far, can you please share the results that you've seen?
Shall I go?
Maybe Mia, we can start again with you.
Yeah, okay. So the results, I guess, you'd have to be able to measure your results before you went through an implementation as well. So that's some of the things that we found improvements with weren't measured ahead of time. So it's like time saving, or like if it was invoice creation, instead of a week, it might have now taken us only a few seconds or minute. But yeah, the results, I guess, are hard to define when things like that weren't KPI'd before, or they weren't noticed before. So it's just noticing, I guess, what we found was time was saved a lot with the implementation of Salesforce. And then the implementation of StoreConnect just gave us the ability that we didn't have before. So it's like even creating its new metric.
Yeah. And that time always equates to money, right? That time saved always equates to money, which means, giving more to your beneficiary. And what about you, Mike? What were the results?
So I did a 2-year update to our executive team a couple of weeks ago, and I opened it up by saying that actually it turns out this whole CRM digital transformation thing isn't very exciting at all, as I thought, as maybe we all thought. And in fact, when it's working well, it just disappears into the background and no one talks about it anymore. So I gave myself that measure of success that the technology has kind of disappeared now, because everything that's supposed to happen happens. Yeah, they're still on the journey and there's always improvement, but everything just fundamentally happens. The answer to most questions which start with "can I" is yes,
Yes.
rather than no. And it's not, at the end of the day, let's be realistic, it's an enabler. It doesn't generate income. And for most fundraising organizations, the market is very up and down. And for us, especially as a humanitarian organization focused on emergencies. So it's almost impossible to track kind of like income improvements, because everything else changes and our whole organization has changed. We've restructured and we've redefined ourselves in 2 years. So I just put a big disclaimer and say, yeah, we're raising way more money than we were 2 years ago. Can I claim credit for anything specifically? No. But have I made a positive difference? Of course, obviously, because everything works now. So
You're very modest. Not everyone is able to say that. That's very modest. Like, I mean, I have to mention this because the fact that you were able to reduce reaching the number of donors, which is millions upon millions in a matter of hours instead of days. You may not be able to quantify in dollar value, but everyone can think like that's really an enormous achievement and milestone.
And our financial performance absolutely reflects that. and we've had huge growth over the last 2 years. I just can't put my finger on it and say that bit is mine, as opposed to these new fundraising practices and the restructure, and we've invested heavily in our brand, and everything's changed.
Yes, and it's an ongoing effort, but I think you've achieved a massive milestone as far as your digital transformation. How did you think that? What is next for your organization? Like you said, Mike, let's start with you. You said it's never ending,
Yeah,
it's ongoing. The roadmap, it's an
yeah.
ongoing optimization of the factory. What's next? Built,
And I
website
do
is
wonder,
built. That's
yeah, I do
congratulations.
wonder whether there's an end. I kind of worry about that a bit, actually. No, but so I think everything that we've done so far, well, most of what we've done so far, especially from a sort of supporter experience perspective, has been very internally driven. And I think that now we've got our new website, the time is now to face it out to our supporters and give them really good online access to manage their own supporter experience, whether it's updating credit card details or changing aspects of their recurring donations, getting receipts, and so on. So that I'm really excited by that whole sort of service optimization, but empowering supporters to self-serve. That's probably the
Amazing.
big next move for us.
And how will you do that? How will you empower? Have you have the solution in place? Where are you at with that?
Yeah, so fortunately, in Salesforce, we've built most of the tools that we need to be used internally by our supporter experience team. So we're going to be using Experience Cloud to basically face those out to the outside world and kind of make it a part of our website, where basically you log in as a supporter and you can there's questions about kind of like exactly what that experience looks like when you log in, and is it customized, is it personalized content as well, and so on. But certainly from a service perspective, we've got the core technology, we've built the stack, we've just actually got to sort of like deploy it outside now.
That's really huge, for all of your um, donors and supporters to be able to just do it their way and not wait for your team to do that. I think that's an exciting initiative you have ahead of you. What about you, Mia? Tell us some of your next initiatives and your North Star.
Yeah, I guess we're going through a little bit of a transformation project internally where we review our Salesforce constantly and see what improvements we can be made. I think the MarTech stack or the marketing stack is something that we're looking into. And how do we stay relevant? How do we stay current? Especially with the changing world around talking about, is personalization too much? Is how do we track people with the cookieless world? So I think it's just a constant review of, are we doing the right thing by who are our stakeholders? Are we servicing them well enough? And what could we be doing better? So that's kind of review process, I might say. Watch this space.
And how often do you do that review? Is that 6 months, quarterly, annually?
I guess large project base, we would work on a 4-year cycle. But
Okay.
every time you get to a point where your feedback coming back from your users or stakeholders increasingly becomes similar. So that's when I would start to say, let's have a look and review the business process end to end, see if it's still relevant in what the world or what our users and stakeholders externally, like customers or donors, are asking for. And if it doesn't, because this is the reasons why, and if it doesn't work, let's improve it, because obviously the feedback we've been getting has been reoccurringly on this same product or on this same process. And the one thing we focus on is to avoid siloing any of our business processes and avoid silo work in our data. So making sure that transparency across an organization is key if they want it, is another statement. So it's like we build everything we want and what everyone requests for everyone's use. And that might not work for everyone because there are red tape out there for a reason. But I think it's something that we do well so that we can better service going forward if everyone knows what's going on. Because if someone in the other department says, oh, I use Salesforce to log my calls, and then someone's like, I didn't know that is even possible, you're kind of not doing the best for them. So that's something we're making sure that we focus on going forward.
Thank you. I think we've got questions from the audience. The first one is, do donors need to be tech savvy to make a donation? Mike, do you want to answer this?
That's a
Do
really
donors?
interesting question, actually. There's,
Yeah.
the average age of our supporters is actually quite high. They're even older than me, some of them. And I think that increasingly, the answer is no. The short answer is no, because we're open on every channel. You can call us, you can send us a check or whatever, but through COVID, there's been just a huge uptake of mobile technology in older demographics, which means that our core audience is much more online than ever. So we have to be wherever they are fundamentally.
Yeah, because you mentioned about the self-serve, I think that's a very relevant question. I have another question for Mia. I think I got it from the audience. How did you get the golden hoodie?
Yeah, so the Golden Hoodie is a internal sales first award. So an employee in Salesforce recognizing someone externally or internally for what they're doing as being good and kind of shining a light so that you can spread that, I guess, goodness with
Goodness and
everyone in the ecosystem.
so for those who don't know what a golden hoodie is, it just means like you're one of the rock stars of in the Salesforce ecosystem. So we've got some questions coming in, but I have to ask my last question. What advice can you give, other organizations right now facing so many challenges, who are who wants to be in the position where you guys are now? What is that one solid advice that you can, part with today? Maybe we start with
One,
Mike, please. Yes,
one
one.
hard. Okay.
One.
I think leverage the wonderful community of the non-profits. I have never said no to anybody. I'm going to regret this. I've never said no to anybody who says, "Can you spare me 15 minutes, 30 minutes? Just we're starting out this project. I heard you've done stuff. Can you talk to me?" So just reach out to your peers and other organizations. There's a wonderful community out there, which is why I run the user group as well.
Yeah. So Mike, can you please talk about your user group? Who, if anyone wants to join, how do they join?
Sure. Yeah. If you just search for oh, gosh, I've got a mental blank as to what you should search for.
We'll
Trailblazer
share
user
it.
groups.
Not-for-profit group.
Yeah, just Trailblazer user groups, not for profit Sydney. It's interesting
Okay.
because they're all virtual now, so I'm not sure why it's Sydney anymore. But yeah,
Yeah. And how often does it happen? Is that once a month or once a week or?
once a most months. Yeah,
Okay.
uh,
Okay. Awesome.
at least 10 times a year, I'd say.
Yeah. And Mia, one advice from you, but I'll ask two questions. One advice for the NFP space and one advice for women in tech.
Yeah, Mike stole it. I don't know why we asked only one, and then we both had the same one. But
Yeah.
I think it's just mainly. I know that customer stories are really important to not-for-profits, being like, what have they done and how has it worked for them? But your partners or your products or Salesforce don't often give it's hard for them to share that with you because obviously it's commercial in confidence, some of the information, or it's highly uh, just it's a story that's been developed by their marketing team. So I would definitely say, yes, listen to those ones, but then get yourself into the community more and reach out to the people like Mike and myself who are in those positions and are willing to talk. But it's not like that highly customized story that has to go public and has to be super refined and everyone approves it to be put out into the public. But we'd be more likely to give you that just the real chat. We'll have a chat with you. What's it like? What we found. We might not be able to share everything, but just get in that community because it's your one key to success ultimately. Or they might give you ideas that you hadn't even thought of.
Build a
And
tribe,
women in
right?
tech. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Thank you for mentioning Women in Tech, because I am that co-leader of the Sydney Women in Tech group, and I'm very passionate about getting women into the tech industry. There are so many misunderstandings out there that it is very difficult to break into, or I've had a massive gap in my my career and I can't get into something like tech. But that's a misnomer. And please reach out to me if you want to join our Women in Tech group. It's similar to Mike's Not-Profit group. We meet only monthly. We're mixing up our hours so that we suit mums and everyone, but anyone is able to join, allies, men, women, everyone. So please come along. Like just yesterday, we held a one about how to set up for your next career job and tips and
amazing.
tricks into the Australian market. So please come along and please promote it to everyone. Tech doesn't have the barriers that it used to. So get involved.
Amazing. And your YouTube channel, please? How do they find
Oh
your
yes,
YouTube
I'm
channel?
terrible at advertising myself, but it is it's called Pace Yourself, and I also have a podcast for Life with Goldie podcast. So anyone that wants to listen to all the golden hoodies out there, you can as well.
Love that. What about you, Michael? Can you please share your one advice to our NFP companies?
I actually was listening to these other two, and it really is the same one. I don't know what to say. I mean, I could say use StoreConnect, right? But that's a bit self-serving. But I would say that it really is the community. I think one of the powerful things around Salesforce is that everyone you meet in the Salesforce community wants to help you because they're all trying to achieve the same thing. They're all trying to get efficiencies in their organization. And there's so much data online that you can capture. I think probably actually my one piece of advice would be ask more questions than you think you need, and really
Yes.
like drill in both on your user side, like the people that are going to use the product, so your own staff and things like this, as well as on the customer side or your donators or your benefactors, because one thing you'll find out is you might go and implement this product, and Mike alluded to this earlier, you might implement this feature, and this whole part of your company has gone off and installed some random product to do something which you just implemented, right? Because they didn't know that the software that you're putting in even does that, right? And that's just a communication problem. And I think the number one thing, like I've worked on probably 200 or 300 software projects in the last 10 years, like big ones. And the number one thing that's common on the projects that fail is lack of communication between the stakeholders. So that would be my number one. I actually even wrote a small online book called The Axioms of Software Development. And the number one thing on that is, well, communication is king. And if you don't have that as a datum, you'll run into all sorts of trouble.
Well, thank you so much, Michael, Mike, and Mia. I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation today, and I'm so grateful for your generosity with your experience, with your time, and just being so serving, being very serving to the community. I hope you guys enjoyed our live stream today. Thank you for staying on, and I hope you learned some valuable lessons. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.